Welcome to the John Passadino Show.
An observational podcast that turns everyday moments into meaningful reflections.
And now here is your host,
John Passadino.
Welcome to the John Passadino Show, and I am John Passadino. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. My podcast is hosted on the Lens of Hopefulness newsletter on Substack, where you can find my articles, other podcasts. Also, this podcast is heard on every major podcast platform, so please spread the word about it. Today, I have another special guest, and her name is, now I'm going to buzz through the pronunciations, and then she can correct me along the way, but I'm going to say it. I'm going to say her name. It's Zehra, and I'm going to go for the last name, Uzeyirli from Azerbaijan. How'd I do, Zehra?
I think you did pretty well. You actually pronounced my last name better than my first one.
Okay.
But it's okay.
And say your first name again so I can get it right.
So it's Zahra Üzeyirli, actually, but I don't really blame you for the pronunciation because it's a little bit hard, you know.
So it's more like Zehra.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, so I'm going to keep, that's going to be my version of it. And I know you'll forgive me for, and Zehra is also on Substack where I am. And her ID is Stories by Zehra. And of course, I'll have the link in the podcast. And it's Stories by Zehra, Zahra. And her newsletter is Catitude. I love that name, Catitude. And she's a political journalist, writer, cat lover. Aha, Catitude, cat lover. Aha. And
Yeah.
I love this part. This is where I identify with her the most. Professional overthinker. Now, I looked up your name and I saw the meaning of it, and it clicked in. Your name means, from what I saw, the internet, the fact check everything, but from what I saw, it means brilliance, light, and radiance. And when I read that,
Yeah.
I was like, that's her. That's you. And from talking to you and in our pre-production call, and also chatting with you on our messages, both from I'm a subscriber, and I see the way you talk to your subscribers, and those three words really do describe how you are, and that's why I have you here. Brilliance, light, and radiance. There we go. And the articles too. I love the articles. I find them to be your articles. They're concise, well constructed, they're well thought out, researched, to the point, even cutting sometimes. So when I read your articles, I was like, we should have a conversation, and that's why you're here. So the other thing I want to say is to everybody out there is I'm just to differentiate the two of us. I am an American Christian senior citizen living in the United States, and Zehra, which I'm going to pronounce it 10 different ways till Sunday, is a Muslim young adult living in Azerbaijan. So I thought it'd be interesting to get two different perspectives, although we seem to like converge together. And when I read your articles, I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I think the same way. But I wanted to get the two different perspectives. So I wanted to talk about one of the articles I like so much was the Friends with Benefit Politics edition.
Yes.
And I'll let you describe it because I've done most of the talking. So let me just say I liked it because I think it really hits the core issue in my country for sure. Why there are problems in politics in general, and the main thrust of that is money and other related.
Mhm.
I'll let you describe from your perspective what you meant by the article.
Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm really proud to be here. It's my first ever podcast, and I'm glad that you brought the story up because I want to express my opinions on it. So, what described me, or what brought me to writing to this article was that seeing people change their opinions on politics based on what their countries or the governments are like doing. For example, my country's, as yours as well, we have good relations with Israel, but that does not mean that I have support to everything, every single thing that they're doing, and that was I think the moment that I was like, I need to write about this because especially when a war is happening, people just think about, this country helped us. Oh, this country gave us like 20 billion. So we should support every single thing that they're doing and the government is doing. And that's a really wrong way to look at the politics because most of the time it's about friends with benefits. There's no friendship, there's no understanding of friendship or enemies in politics. As you can see, there's a lot of countries who claim to be enemies like centuries ago, and they're doing pretty much well right now. And for example, we have good relations with Turkey or Israel or any other country right now, but who might know what will happen in a few years? So claiming countries to be friends with them or enemies with them, I think that's really um, that's like what the government is trying to make us see the things. But I think we should leave it aside and just take an objective look at what is happening at the current situation. For example, my country does not have the best relations with India since we support Pakistan. It's like not fair on their behalf as well.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that if there's like a plane crash in that country, I'm gonna be like celebrating. That's really very dehumanizing. That's really not a good thing to do. But I've seen a lot of people do that, especially in the comment section and stuff. They're like, oh, I stand with Russia or I stand with this and that. And that's really, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and seeing another human in a bad situation personally does not make me happy. And if it does make you happy, maybe you should ask yourself a few questions of why does it make you happy or why do you not care about another human being's life?
I like what you said about humanity and being human. As a professional overthinker myself, I think of these things. I turn things on their ear and I go, let's look at it each way. And I actually said an expression yesterday. I was talking to my wife. I said, there are three sides to every story. I've heard this expression. I don't know if you've heard it. There are three sides to every story: my side, your side, and then there's the truth, and neither one of them is a lie. I love that expression because there is a kernel of truth on each side, and there's also the opposite too. So we have to weigh in all those different perspectives, I feel. Otherwise, you get this, like in my country now, we have a big movement toward Christian nationalism. This is the
Mhm.
way because our leader is pushing, he's trying to change the culture to the way he thinks it's right, or whoever is telling him it's right. And that's causing such division because they're only seeing it from their way. And then the other side gets more emboldened to see it their way and to fight the other way. Before you know it, we have a divided country, just like we have a divided world. So, and getting back to the article again, and I love the way you research history. You go way back into when you were talking about Turkey and Azerbaijan and their relationship. And oh, that's another thing I want to point out: the difference between our two countries, yours and mine. Our country is young. Your country has been around a long time. And you go back to the relationship with Turkey and Azerbaijan, you go back to, let's look at history, the year 1514,
Yeah.
a battle between the Ottoman Empire and the Safavid, I think it's called Empire.
Yeah, yes. Safavid Empire.
Yeah. And so there's been all this give and take over the years between all these different empires and kingdoms and um and you say this was just the beginning of the ongoing conflict between two brotherly nations that lasted over 40 years. And then there was peace in 1555. So, I mean, that's the other thing about the issues between countries, like going back to we talked before. Today is June 13th, 2025. Just to give a
Mhm.
point in time when this was recorded, and there's been an attack of Israel on the nuclear facilities in Iran. And we look back on, and of course, we have Gaza that's going on. These things have been going on for hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of years in some cases.
Yeah. And actually, the thing is that Hamas has been created after like Israel and, Gaza relations. So actually, Israel attacked Gaza way before the Hamas was created. So that brings us to say that Hamas is not the core of the issue, but it actually like has been there for a long time, for about more than 70 years, and that's like crazy. Like that, like a lot of generations have been this for. And in my country, for example, we had a conflict that lasted about more than 30 years.
Mhm.
So we even had a family who's like somebody died recently during the last Karabakh war, which happened in 2020, and his own father also died in the previous war. So it's actually like really crazy because like a lot of generations are being destroyed in these wars, and especially if they're like lasting for decades. And I don't know, like I think for the Gaza, obviously it has a huge impact because wiping out an entire generation is really, really bad, and it has its effects. And it's not something that, something has been destroyed and whatever, it just keeps continuing, like its effects, entire generational trauma and etc. It's just really bad.
Yes, I was thinking that too about the when I see the video and the pictures of children with little buckets waiting for food in Gaza on the food line or crowds of people, and I'm saying th those children are going to grow with trauma, number one, and the trauma. I read about trauma and how it stays generationally. There's
Mm-hmm.
book called The Body Keeps the Score, which I've mentioned in another podcast about how the trauma sets in and it just doesn't leave and it gets passed on. So those children are going to grow up traumatized and it's going to change the way they live their lives. And number two, they're going to are we going to expect them to just sit back and go, "Oh, that just happened. It was no big deal. It's gone. It's over now." No, they're going to be seeking revenge. I mean, they're going to be have a horrible, perspective and attitude toward Israel or whoever caused, whoever, whatever human has an issue caused to them. They're not going to just be able to release that. It's going to be like, well, when I get older, we're going to right this wrong. I mean, I'm not saying every single person, but a lot of them will. And then it'll just go on and on. I don't know if it could ever end. It's disconcerting when I think about it. Uh,
That's true. And actually, I think it's most like how most people think, because let's say somebody kills my brother and I'm like, I'm gonna take revenge, and somebody else also thinks this way, so they join an organization or a group which claims or gives them the guarantee that it's going to have a victory or it's going to give them what they have lost, but at the end of the day they will not. And that's the issue. I think the Hamas is like financed by Iran, and I don't think Iran cares about Gazan people. And that's really sad. They just care about their organizations and everything. And at the end of the day, people die, and it's just, there's nothing that will give them back what they have lost, whether it's people, their homes, or whatever. It's just, I don't know, it's really sad. And when we just generalize the whole thing, the wars do not benefit any sides or any countries. I mean, not the people. Obviously, the government will get money if they're selling weapons while people are dying in the front line. But at the end of the day, it doesn't benefit the people. I think that's why we should change this whole thing, this concept of war. So when I see a video of a, for example, young boy, and they're just asking, would you serve for your country or would you fight for your country? And some of them say yes, some of them say no. When they are asked why do they not, they're like, I know that when I fight, who will get the benefit is not my family, but the government, and it's not going to change anything. And some people agree with that opinion. I personally think as well. I mean, military is a huge power. It gets a lot of money as well. I mean, there's countries like Israel obviously spend a lot of trainings, a lot of money on their military because they know that the region that they're living in is not very peaceful and it's not going to be, and their future like aspirations and stuff. So they are always like living to, like they're ready to face a new war. And I think we should change that perspective. Obviously, that is not something that just depends on the people, but declaring a war in other country, etc. And that's what people of Iran also thought about for a very long time. But I think now the people realize that the regime is using their power, their money, their everything. At the end of the day, people are losing their lives. It's not really giving anybody anything. So what they want is just peace.
Yeah.
They don't want wars because they realize that the war or the victory that have been claimed is a huge lie and it's not really very beneficial for anyone.
Yes, it seems to we go in these cycles like and I was thinking about just to take it to a couple of other countries because there's always wars going on. But I was thinking about Russia and Ukraine. And ironically, your country was actually part of the USSR at one point.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at Russia and what they're doing. It's like I feel like are they trying to recreate the USSR? Is that ultimately what they want to do? Is like take pieces of land and then start branching out? I mean, that's the fear. The world's fear is that once if they are able to take Ukraine, the next will be say Poland or whatever another country. But I was again thinking, going back to the needless loss of life and the carnage that is going on in both countries. People are just dying and getting ravaged, and buildings are getting smashed, hospitals. It doesn't matter. Everybody's just and they're spending billions of dollars. And you're right. You said something about the money that goes in, the defense contractors that are making money on this. It seems like so diabolical that it's this cycle of carnage and the going back to your article, the underlying money that's involved.
Yeah.
The defense industry is insane, insanely making a big profit. And that happened going way back. I was thinking about also, sorry, I'm all over the place, but I'm going back to the wars, going back to Iraq and after Iraqi freedom, I think that was the first one. And then Bush went in to Iraq again, and there was all this talk about how the defense contractors were driving that too. They wanted us to go in again and spend more money. Now, I'm not talking from facts. Now, I'm talking about hearsay and things that I've read. But again, it's that underlying issue of money, which brings me back to your article about the exchange of billions between countries. And I wanted to get back to the point of oh, yeah, we were talking about, again, back to money, is I was looking at your article triggered this thought too about the money. And I think we might have talked a little bit about it. I'm not sure. I was looking at our presidential campaigns, the 2020 presidential campaigns. The each side spent almost $1 billion. Can you believe it? On their campaigns. That means
That's really good.
that means that, yeah, and they're super PACs, they're called political action committees that donate money. And when they do, of course, they want something back in return. So getting back to Israel and all that, I do believe that Trump is his motivations were driven by contributions. In other words, to him and his campaign and all that. Now he feels obligated to stay because he's been so crazily, on the side of Israel without taking into account what's going on in Gaza. And now he's like waving, this with this invasion. I'm sorry, the attack of Israel on Iran. He started making statements again on social media. You got to take the deal. You got to take the deal. He's always about making deals, making deals. Meanwhile, he pulled out of the last Iran agreement what they had with the United States. But again, it's all this driver of business contributions. It's always that. It's always that, it seems. And I'm sorry, I sound so cynical.
No, no, I agree with you actually. And I think Trump is one of those presidents who only see things as like, how can I make profit out of that? How can I like earn money from this? And actually, in Israel, I think he also sees it as a profit, even though it's been a friendship that lasted for years. I think even the fact that Trump went to Saudi Arabia and all these, Arab countries, because there was profit and it benefited him, I think that once again shows that Trump only cares about the money, even if something happens like between the countries, even if it's a country that they claim to be enemies, which in fact Syria and the new Syria president used to be the leader of Al Qaeda, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Shara, and yeah,
He,
like back in the day, US was like, I'm giving millions of dollars, whoever gets me the head of this man. And now they're just meeting and having a conversation together. That once again proves that everything is at the end of the day profit. So if in politics, if you like benefit, if you make money, if you're able to give them money, then you can be friends. It doesn't matter if you have been enemies for like centuries. It doesn't matter.
yeah, he's letting it slide that there's an ex-Al Qaeda person in charge of Syria now, which was another hot mess. I mean, I'm glad that is kind of settling now. It is settling. Russia, I believe, left, um, and the rebels won that conflict. Um, so getting back to our perspectives of the senior citizen from the United States and the young adult from Azerbaijan, we both are seeing the same thing. So that's encouraging because now, with that being said, I do know a lot of people in my age range who are MAGA conservative Republicans who will completely disagree with what we're saying, but that's okay. We're not going to go there right now. Um, I want to shift over to another article that I liked. I like all of them, by the way, but another one called the Dexter. We're going to shift away from politics and uh, I guess, but money will still be involved in this one. Um, the Dexter Effect. You wrote an article called "The Dexter Effect: How We Lost Our Humanity," and you talk about the role of social media in it,
Yeah.
and it's another of social media drives me completely mad. But I read a statistic recently. I don't have the link to it or anything, but I read that there are, we know there are around 8 billion people in the world.
Yeah.
that there are 5 billion social media accounts. If they total up all the accounts across every platform and every single account created, I'm talking about. Now, some people might have 30 accounts, but imagine 5 billion out of 8 billion accounts. It's incredible what's out there. So you're talking about in this the Dexter effect. I'll let you explain it, but what is the Dexter effect and how is it impacting us?
So I wanted to name it the Dexter effect because I kept seeing like Dexter edits, and I don't know if you watch Dexter. He's like he doesn't have any emotions. I think he's close to a sociopath. It's not really a narcissist, but he cannot feel emotions most of the time. He's faking it, and he talks about how he masters emotions. Meanwhile, there's a clip where the lady is crying in next to him, and he's like just looking at her like, what am I supposed to do? So I thought about this, and I connected with the people who are often around us, whether it's in social media or in real life, who see things happening, who see somebody dying out in the street, or who see like a very tragic incident, and they do not react. Not good or bad, but they don't react. And I think that's a really huge issue because if we look at the society, most people do not want to be the first one to help. So what will they do is they will ignore it and they will not react. And if we all keep doing that, after some point, I think we are just going to be living like robots. Like something is happening with my neighbor. Why would I care? It's not my life. If everybody thinks this way, then we are going to lose a lot of human traits, which in fact, I think social media has a lot of effect on this because most of the time, especially in certain contents like gore, death, and stuff, people are just watching a lot of things because it's available, especially on Telegram and platforms where these things are not even blurred or banned. They're openly watching somebody get in their, I don't know, like throat getting sliced or something like that. And they think they're just being cool watching and not reacting, but I think it's not really a good sign because most of the time these contents actually affect us in a very bad way because if you keep watching that, then it starts being normalized. And uh, as somebody, like imagine you're somebody who watches this content for every day and you're used to seeing dead bodies or whatever because this content is what makes you feel powerful. So when you see something happen in public, you will not react because you will be like, oh, I've seen worse than that. So that is a huge issue. And I think that it is a way to dehumanize, and social media's content that obviously depends on us what we're watching, but at the end of the day it helps us to dehumanize because I've seen a lot of content also where people are just expecting others, like I'm just going to you in public and without even asking if you want to be in the interview, which was what people were asking back in like those times. Now they're just putting the microphone on your face, and if you don't talk then you are just a old man, like you're so grumpy, whatever. And
Yeah.
I've seen a video like that, and the guy was demanding people to like answer his questions, and he was just like literally not leaving. People are like, I do not want to be interviewed. And people in the comments were like, some of them were calling it out, but other 50, like almost half of the people were like, it's not really a big deal. You're not like Dua Lipa. Why are you running? Like,
Hmm.
I don't know, like it's like some people were justifying it and the others were like, but they didn't give it consent though. So social media and the idea of consent, I think it's kind of like clashing
Hmm.
because most of the time when somebody is going to you with a mic and like their camera on, you just think, I'm going to be on somewhere like TikTok or whatever. So because they're already filming you, they're already one in the power.
Hmm.
There's two options. You either just like chicken up and run away, which is like not most people do because they're afraid of being judged, or you just stand there awkwardly and answer their questions, which in fact is not fine in my opinion because As a journalist, I have interviewed people, I've done street surveys, whatever. But if somebody says, I'm not interested or I don't want you to post this interview, whatever, I will not post it. That's not very ethical. And I think that's what social media is doing because it's more freestyle, it's more free, there's not really much of the standards there. So people are just doing what they want. And at the end of the day, I think that was what brought me to write this article. The fact that social media has a huge impact on us and like people are getting dehumanized.
Yes, and you say in the article, I'm reading one of the sentences. By the way, this is on Catitude. The newsletter is Catitude. Think of meow, cats, Catitude on Substack. You say this is the desensitization effect. It's highly popular on Instagram. Even the cutest video can possibly get the weirdest reply you've ever seen. Like people are just like looking at stuff, and I'll go backwards. You say humanity is lost. The first comment under a disabled person's Instagram reel isn't something positive. It's like, yeah, here's this person suffering, but it's all about clicks. It's like it got a lot of clicks, and now the person's commenting, and it becomes almost like a surreal entertainment is what it's become. And I was at a barbecue recently, and people were just flashing their phones with different videos on them, showing each other, look at this one, look at that one, and it's just people behaving badly. And and it's frustrating, by the way, because you're a legitimate journalist and writer, and I'm a writer, and we're out there working really hard on our articles, and we research them, we write them out carefully, put all our heart and soul into our articles, and we're getting maybe hundreds at this point. It'll grow, of course. Hopefully, I think it will. Hundreds of readers say, but then you have somebody that's like slapping somebody, and they're getting like hundreds of thousands of clicks. But we have to be careful of what I know I have to be careful of is not getting sucked into that, like not getting desperate and trying extra hard to say something controversial, do something controversial, just so I can get the attention. We need to keep our integrity, which brings me back to us and you and how you write. There's an integrity in what you write. You're not writing for clicks. You're writing to get a message out, to express your morality, which I think is great. Yeah. So, what I also want to say, at one point, I know in this country, uh, Facebook, and I guess it applies to global too. Facebook, Twitter, when it was Twitter, and I guess Instagram too, they were kicking people off the platform when they violated the terms and conditions. So every time we get on an app, even like on Substack or I'm on medium.com, if we violate the terms and conditions of the platform, we can get our accounts revoked. That's at the discretion of the owner of the platform. They want to set certain rules. Like on Substack, I'm sure they don't want violent contact and hate speech and all that. So they set terms and conditions. But what happened was, again, going back to Trump, oh my gosh, he was, and the right was blasting the platforms for suppressing free speech. I find it comical. So they pushed to reinstate Trump, who was expressing hate speech constantly. And so this is another related issue I'm talking about now, is that now the bluster is back, and the name calling and the accusations and the hate speech. I see it with Elon Musk taking over and changing Twitter to X. When I go out to X, I'm looking and I can't believe what I'm reading. People are just like just writing hate-filled rants and attacking each other. Of course, Trump weighed in on the Iran attack this morning too with his bluster, and the Truth Social, his platform, which he developed because he got kicked off the other platforms. But just wrapping up the social media question is that I feel everybody's getting sucked into this vortex of, like, we wrapping it back into the article, of this vortex of emotion. And emotion sells. We know that. I mean, you look at any great, drama on TV, and it's the emotion that brings people back. And actually, in classes that I've taken on social media, they say do emotional stuff because that sucks people in. But I draw the line. I'm not going to do that. I want to read your conclusion real quick. You say, bringing it back to your article, journalism shapes the way we see the world. Media has reached a level that it affects our daily moods and emotions. Do you realize how powerful and dangerous this is? Remember the time on Instagram, randomly, everyone started getting bully, hate, and violence-based contents? I'm going to keep reading. We were the lab rats. They tested us without most even realizing. This itself proved how much social media affects our lives. I'll wrap it up. I'm going to read the rest. Now, lastly, as writers, we should not forget the fact that we're also human, and we can change this cycle for the better. So thank you for writing that. So,
I'm glad you liked it.
yeah, I mean, I feel like you and I, and now let's talk about you. This is about you now. But I feel like, you ever hear the expression voice in the wilderness? It's like you're out there, writers, we should not forget the fact that we're also human. As writers, we should not forget that we're also human. And we can change the cycle for the better. It's like a little voice out there. I'm not saying this to demean you, by the way. I'm saying it. I feel like we're trying so hard to get this message out, but who the heck is listening? Everybody's on TikTok watching like little clips of these controversial topics because they get a dopamine hit from it. I think that's the bottom line, right? Is that people getting a dopamine hit from watching these little clips. Same thing with Facebook and all the emotional content that's out there. Anytime people put something emotional, there's like in the United States, there's a newspaper based in New York called the New York Post. It's very right wing leaning. It's owned by Rupert Murdoch, who's owns a conglomerate of journals and newspapers and Fox News. He owns Fox News, which is, I feel, is a propaganda network. And his philosophy is to draw people in with emotional stuff. Every day it's breaking news. The left is taking over the country. And then the New York Post does this too, by the way. So I look at it and I get drawn into it. I actually go back to New York Post because I want to see what they're saying, because I want to jump on the comment section and I want to argue with somebody. That's me. I'm falling for it. That's what they want. They want us to click and they want us to engage and fight. I just made an admission. I'm sorry, everybody. I've become addicted to fighting with people on the New York Post comment section. Okay. Let's move on to another topic. I wanted to let me get back to Catitude. And by the way, this is the John Pasadena show you're listening to, and go out to Substack and check out Catitude. I saw another one. You wrote about anxiety, because that's, if I could find it. Oh, how anxiety almost killed me. This is another one I read and commented on. So we'll make this our third example of your writing. This is the third one. Dear society, you've pushed me to the edge, so here's some clarity. Madison Beer. I woke up every day wishing I was dead, every single day. And you say, I write these stories to turn my pain into power, power of connection. I never was someone who would wish for death. I was afraid of dying at some point in my life, until that day when I learned that my grandfather passed away. You go through this whole journey of what happened with him and how you felt so anxious and the grief and I'm going to go through toward the end. Why couldn't I be happy? I said to myself, and that was the moment I decided to change. I was going to make him proud, my friends, my grandpa, most importantly, me. And you talked about you were processing your grief and your sorrow in this, and I felt it very moving. Can you explain more about the article and why you wrote it and how you,
Yeah.
yes.
Actually, I think there's a process when it comes to the emotions like anxiety, depression, overthinking that most of the time you don't want to talk about it, you ignore the feeling. So I think taking the courage to write about it, personally for me at least, is a huge step because if somebody would tell me that I'm going to write on Substack about what happened to, you know, like the losses that I had and everything, like anxiety, I would just laugh at it because I thought writing about this is dumb until the moment that I saw that most people fall into this trap, especially like in anxiety, because they think they are the only ones feeling this way. So when you feel alone, it just keeps draining you, and the thoughts that, oh, nobody is like sad, but it's only me. I'm the one being drained, I'm the one overthinking, blah, blah, blah. So when you feel alone, it's actually, I think, really bad for you. And so the key point here is obviously taking it all out from my heart, because writing is obviously a form of therapy and I think it's really useful. But besides that, also to connect with people who also look at the article, which in fact they have. And I've gotten DMs and, people telling me that, thank you for writing about this. Somebody, because like they're feeling sad or whatever, they see our articles and they see something, they're like, connecting with the article, and it's like 3 a.m. They're feeling sad at the moment. They're just reading our articles and they're like, oh, I'm actually connecting with this person. I feel like I can relate to, and that's, I think, one of the best things about Substack, because I personally do not read the articles or content that I do not feel like I relate to. So when I write the articles, I just ask myself, would I stop and like give my 2 minutes to read this article? If not, then maybe we should change like something about this. And especially when it comes to the anxiety and like depression, I think stories like this do not really need much of polishing, or editing, because it's really emotional, and it must be feeling like, I mean, my stories usually feel like I'm just talking to a friend. It's not like I'm just writing about something from a distant voice. So that's what it's supposed to be feeling like, because when people can feel like they can relate to your content, they just keep reading it. And at the end of the day, you don't get to make a new subscriber. You don't get to have somebody to read your content, but also somebody who resonates with your content and feels like not alone but safe in your community and your space. And I think that's the one of the best things about Substack, because I didn't really see this on Medium, because probably I didn't use Medium a lot. But I think on Substack people are more genuine, and based on my experience, they just get to write more emotional stories like this one. I've seen a lot of stories that I personally felt like relating to, and the fact that you get to like engage not with the post but also the writer, um, it's really amazing feeling. And yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking also, I agree. I've met in just a few short months I've been on Substack. I met so many interesting people and have had some conversations like this. And that's why I have this podcast, because it gets I'm breaking through the like mediums, just read and make comments. But here it's multimedia. There's lots of pictures, there's some videos shared, and there's actual conversation like this, because this podcast is based on Substack. The other thought that came to me as we were talking, and as I was going through Catitude, I was, clicking around as you were talking, the articles stay there. They're timeless. They stay. Anybody can go back and read them. Like you don't with the little videos and social media, the like the Instagrams and the video. There's shorts all over the place. There's YouTube shorts. There's TikTok shorts. There's I don't know. They're all over the place. But people just scroll through. They pass them by, and that's it. There's no there's no like what I was doing with your articles, for example. I could sit there and process and read line by line, make notes, and go back to it and look at it again, process it, and then also. I wish maybe Substack will give us a little money for saying this because we're plugging Substack. um, you could talk to people on Substack via comments, but also via the DMs, like you were saying when you're a subscriber, a person's a subscriber to Catitude, by the way, you send messages to us like, "How's it going today? Let's talk. This is Friday. What's everybody up to? How's the weekend going?" And that kind of connection is so beyond what social media, the typical. I'm talking about the typical scrolling thing, the doom scrolling, and
Hmm.
that is so beyond what social media offers. And that's why, excuse me, that's why I like Substack so much. And I like your newsletter. So, anyway, and I just want to talk briefly also outside of Substack a second. You are a journalist. And
Hmm.
what are you specializing in your journalizing career outside of Substack?
I mean, outside of Substack, I generally write articles on politics, like not what's happening inside my country, but more like all around the world. And the last article I wrote about was about the plane crash in India because only one person survived and he's, feelings about this and what happened, whatever. And
Yeah,
yeah, overall, I think on Substack, I didn't want to really do the same thing because politics is really cool. It's interesting. You like to research whatever, but it's really draining. So doing this all the time, it's just, I think, really tiring both for me because I already do that for my job. I wanted to use Substack for the stories that I do not get to told at my job because it's not, related to there. So I wanted to write about things from a different perspective. For example, the politics edition of Friends with Benefits is still about politics, but it's not something that you get to read on use on a daily basis.
yeah, yeah.
So a fresh perspective, something new, something. Uh, I try to do that, which I'm not sure if I succeed, but trying to write on something that somebody has never written on before because people like to see something new. And especially on contents like, motivational and like, what I wrote on anxiety and stuff, a lot of people are actually already doing that. So, and since I'm already a very indecisive person, I wanted to write twice a week. And on Substack, it's just one political story and one lifestyle or one
Mhm.
something that I just want to like write in a letter to my teacher or whatever, something like that.
I could see that your newsletter is broken up into sections like Money Power,
Yeah.
Meow or Never, which I think is so cute, the title. Um, and your chats, all that. So I have to tell you again, I want to get back to the two perspectives we were talking about before we started. The theme we would go for would be like have an older perspective, you have a younger perspective, and we're from different countries, very different. But there's a thread that we have, which is the want and need to express ourselves and to embrace humanity. So I have to tell you, as we wrap this with a nice conversation. By the way, everybody, we hardly know each other. We're just, this conversation is like the first in-depth conversation we've had. We had like a really brief pre-production, like how does this work and what are we going to do? And then, so we just, this is the first time these two people from two different countries, like separated by 40 something years, have spoken. And so I'm really proud of it. And I want to tell you that you give me hope for the human race. You do, because I see the work you're putting in and I see where your heart is. You're courageous and you're working hard to make things right as much as you can, even though we all know there's so much in our control. I commend you for what you're doing. And I thank you for being here talking to me. This is a unique privilege for me. So thank you so much for joining me today.
I also enjoyed being a part of this podcast, and I'm really glad that it happened to be with someone who also resonates with my content and who also understands things from a fresh perspective. So it didn't really feel like an interview, but more like a friendly conversation. And as you mentioned, we have about 40 years apart. We're from different backgrounds, different like religion, country even. But I think this podcast just once again proves that even though we grew up in different cultures in different places, in different time zones, even different timings, and maybe back then things were a lot different. We get to connect at some point when it comes to humanity, when it comes to peace and love. We get to have like we get to like share the same opinion on it, and I think that's beautiful. And at the end of the day, I think if we as humanity could connect all together, living everything that we have that's different, like religion or background, living that, you know, I am from here or you're from there, and if we could just leave this discrimination alone and just love each other the way that we are, and we could grow together, then the world would be a lot different. We would not have any wars. We would not have any discrimination. We would not need a Black Month, but we would, for example, show everybody the same amount of respect and love. And I think we can do it together if you just connect and just get along. And if you just leave everything alone, that just seems to be like flaws to one another. And we get to like connect at some point, because at the end of the day, you know, we are all going to the same place, like we're all going to die. So I think what matters is to make this life as meaningful as we can. And that is not something we can do with hate and, you know, discrimination or anything like that. So and actually one little point I want to mention is that even though I judge politics or politicians or, you know, some people because of certain things, I will never be the one to encourage to hate on someone. So instead of like hating on even on the politicians, I think we need to criticize and we need to see what's good and what's not good. So hating on someone doesn't really help or change anything, and I think that at the end of the day hurts the person who is hating. So yeah.
Absolutely spot on. And, I complain about my leader in the United States a lot. He annoys the heck out of me, but I do not hate him, or even the far right or the far left or whatever. I am just into like, let's be at peace without putting my head in the sand. So I know exactly where you're coming from. Um, and I want to come back to brilliance, light, and radiance. That is what you bring. And thank you for that. And thank you to your parents for that too. And thank God too. Hey, let's throw one in for God. Um, and thank you for joining me. And once again, folks, the newsletter on Substack, go to Substack and find Catitude. You'll find that there. You'll find it on Substack and subscribe to it. And you could converse with Zara. And that's how I'm saying your name for the rest of the podcast. And this podcast is based in the Lens of Hopefulness newsletter on Substack. And it can be heard on Amazon Music, Audible. There's more. It'll come to me. Spotify. There's a Google Cast. I mean, it actually gets pushed out from, it's based in Substack. It gets pushed out to all those platforms. So tell your friends and family. I am shamelessly asking you to please spread the word about this podcast, because every podcast, most of them are interviews with people who are very unique, like Zara. I'm going to say the last name again. I think I got it right the first time. Uze Yearly. Okay. Azur Really? Yeah, something like that. No, that's Azerbaijan. I have all my cheat notes here from my big staff of reference people. That's just me, by the way. And I had all my cheat sheets all made out, and now it's all jumbled, and I'm trying to read Uze Early. Yeah, there we go. Unique people like this, and actually, thanks to Substack, I'm meeting them. So, because it's international, people from all over. So, and then also you could check me out at johnpwrites.com. The rest of my work, some books and poems and other stuff, johnpwrites.com. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
It was my pleasure. Bye.
Thank you for listening.
You can find John's writing and other work
At johnpwrites.com.